Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by MMA veteran Jamal Patterson. Jamal, how are you?
How's everything going, guys?
It's going good, it's going good. Jamal, we're about 2 weeks removed from a very big weekend in your life. Two of your guys, David Branch and Liam McGeary, picked up two very big wins, and they captured, or I guess in McGeary's case, he defended. So they have two belts now. Just curious, how great was that weekend for you?
From an experience that I'm sure most people can't say they really thought it was unbelievable, but from a stressful weekend, it wasn't that much fun. But when it was all said and done, it was all worth it. And I don't think many people can say in their lifetimes that they went out there and won two world titles with two different people in 2 different days. But leading up to it, the stress of going out there and knowing that I wasn't going to be with Liam all week, and then knowing that I had to be with Branch in the beginning, that was making me worry that Liam was not going to be focused. So there was a lot of stress going up into that point. But the most important thing is that the guy stays focused, and those guys are veterans in the game, and they were able to keep their stuff together. We were able to put the right people in place, and they were able to come out and have some very, very big victories. And for Liam, Liam beat a veteran in the sport pretty easily. And if you really look at Liam's career, Liam hasn't really been fighting that long. So for him to go out there and beat somebody like Tito the way that he did, and was able to handle all of the circumstances leading up to it, really talks highly about this kid's character and what kind of person he is.
Mm-hmm. Just curious, how did you get from Phoenix, Arizona to San Jose, California? Did you guys leave right after David Branch's fight on that night? Because I noticed that both you and him were in Liam McGeary's corner. Did you guys leave that night, or did you wake up early the next morning and then fly out?
We woke up at 5 a.m. after, of course, we had to do a little bit of a celebration for David. He wanted to go out, but Dave is very focused. So Dave, right now, at this point in his career right now, he's all about, winning as many fights as he can. And, we went out, but Dave wasn't really drinking or doing anything like that. So we woke up, and it's still, it's the high of just the win. You can't go to sleep, and the high of just all of the stuff that was surrounding you, kept him up late. And we ended up going to sleep for like an hour or so, jumped in a shuttle at 5 a.m., and we hustled off to California, and we woke up, we got to Liam, and Liam was eating lunch. We met him, and we took about an hour nap there, and then it was, going off to win our second title.
Mm-hmm. Whose dime was the flight on? Was it World Series of Fighting? That was like your return flight, and then Bellator paid for...
That's a good question. I think what happened was World Series of Fighting paid... It was basically like my return flight. My return flight never came back to... It never came back to New Jersey. It ended up going right to California. And then Bellator lucked out. They only had to pay a one-way ticket back. So Bellator should thank World Series. They saved the money.
Okay. Because I was very interested in knowing about that. That was when I saw you in the corner, because I saw you in Phoenix with David Branch, and then I saw you again, because I wasn't sure that you were going to be at the McGeary fight. So then when I saw you in Liam McGeary's corner, I was like, okay, I'm very interested in knowing how you got there. So
very interesting, too, because, we were in a situation where we're trying to get Liam up for the biggest fight of his career, and, we're getting in the locker room, and everyone's coming back and congratulating David Branch, and it's like, all right, yesterday was David's day. Today's, now is Liam's moment. Let's switch gears and get this guy, out there and focus and get ready to win.
Mm-hmm. Now, did David Branch and Liam McGeary, were they a part of each other's training camps, or were they separate?
David and Liam are very close friends. They train every day together. They have similar training coaches. Their boxing coaches are different, but they both train with me. They both train with boxing coaches that I'm very familiar with. Jason Stroud is Liam's main coach. Jason Stroud works with David as well, and then David works a lot with a guy named Lenny Richards, who's out in Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy Boxing in Brooklyn. And but we're New York's a small, it's a huge city, but a small city in terms of the MMA world, and especially all of the affiliations that we have with like the Henzo Association and the great coaches that we've aligned ourselves with to get these guys the best coaching that they can get, and as prepared as they can get.
Now let's start with David Branch's fight, since he fought on Friday, or of that week, I should say. So he fought up a weight class. He's usually a middleweight, but he went into that light heavyweight tournament, and this was the final for the vacant light heavyweight championship for World Series of Fighting. He fought against Teddy Holder. What were your thoughts about his performance in the fight?
I think going up to the fight, we watched a guy, Teddy Holder, who no one really knew who he was, but he went out and knocked out a very, very Thiago Silva, and we were like, okay, we got to watch, pay attention to this kid a little bit. We were prepared for everything. The one thing that is unique about David is David's one of the few MMA guys out there that you can say is truly well-rounded. There's a lot of guys that are strong wrestlers and strong strikers, but there's a few that are very strong wrestlers and also very good jiu-jitsu guys as well. What I mean by that is he can take you down, and when he gets you on the ground, he's going to actually submit you. He's not going to sit there and just, throw punches at you. So, David's super, super well-rounded. So we kind of looked at it, and, I was looking at Teddy Holder's hands, and I thought he was pretty tough, but, the reality is, this day and age with mixed martial arts, you can't be a gunslinger, and what I mean by that is you can't just expect to sit in front of somebody and just bang away, because with those little 4-ounce gloves, you're one punch away from getting knocked out. If you look at the top guys have to be well-rounded, because at some point you need to slow the fight down a little bit. And, Dave, luckily, and he's blessed, he has that ability to stand up and strike, because he's got boxing. His stand-up is like a professional boxer. And, he's been wrestling for 14 years with some of the best wrestling coaches in the world. And he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So, David had woken up in the morning, looked me in the eye, and he goes, I'm taking him down and submitting him. I'm not standing with him. He was like, there's no reason for me to be, to do that. And I agree with him, David has a skill set that's so high and so strong. Why take the risk of having somebody like Teddy Holder knock him out, who is a very heavy-handed guy?
During training camp, what was the game plan going in? Because I know you just touched on it. You said that David Branch told you, I'm just going to take the guy down.
We really didn't really have a plan. It was one of these things where, we were kind of getting them prepared for anything that could happen. You always want to be prepared for anything that could happen. What if, we can't judge a guy by his low. We can look at a guy's last fight and look at his history and assume that we can, find things that he's very, predictable with, and things that he does over and over again. But, I have fighters that drastically change within 2 or 3 months. And, this kid was a Division I athlete. And, athletes can come out there and spend a lot of time, spending 3 or 4 months. And, now we go out there with a game plan and we try to execute. It doesn't work. Sometimes these guys lose their mind out there. So, our kind of game plan was like, yeah, listen, we know if we get it to the ground, we can finish you. But we also know that, Dave, if you need to stand up, you're a world-class striker. There's not going to be any problems. But let's try to take the fight at its, where it's going to be the easiest for you. I personally thought Dave would be able to knock this guy out pretty easy, because I was just watching the way he box, and I know he's a big hitter, but he's a little bit predictable. He likes to punch off of your punches, and Dave is a little slick with his stand up. He's going to be able to jab you, come back out, and then change directions and change pace, and he's very good with distance. So I knew that Dave would be able to knock him out, but he had gotten, I'll tell you exactly what happened and why he made his game plan. That morning, he had gotten a text message from one of our fellow black belts, a guy named Carl Massaro, and Carl Massaro is very poetic in the words that he said, and I can't even transcribe. I'll tell you back what they said, but the short of it all was, he basically was like, David, you're a lion who's going to jump on your prey and devour it. And Dave looked at me, he showed me the text message, and was like, I'm taking this guy down and I'm going to submit him. And that's exactly what he did.
Now, since David Branch is the middleweight and light heavyweight champion of World Series of Fighting, is his plan to keep fighting at both weight classes and defend both belts?
I think that's something we're going to have to talk to David about. And I think right now it's a couple issues. First, Dave is a very, very big 185-pounder. He's probably an average 205-pounder, maybe a little bit on the small side. So, to sit and stay at 205, I don't know if it's the smartest thing to do. However, we're also in a world where if the money's right, you're going to do what the money says. So I'm sure if they give him the right fight at 205 with the right amount of money, I'm sure he'll do it, But right now, I'm sure that his focus is getting back down to 185, to defend that belt at 185. And if he's got to fight at 205, listen, Dave's pretty versatile, and he can do whatever he wants. But it really depends on, what the organization's telling him to do, what the organization, who they're putting in front of him, and, what kind of money they're offering him. Because if they're going to offer him a little bit of money, I'm not talking from Dave's standpoint, I'm talking from Jamal Patterson's standpoint. If they're not going to offer him a big amount of money and they're going to give him a big name at 205, I probably would drop to 185 and, defend my 185-pound belt. But, Dave's very versatile, and I think Dave can beat be one of the best guys in the world at 205. So I think he can do either or.
In a perfect world, if the stars were to align exactly how you want them to align, what would you like to see him do next?
I'd like to see him stay at 185. I'd like to see him stay at 185, and I'd like to see Dave make as much money as he can. Listen, everybody would like to, end their career in the UFC and end their career as a UFC champion and do all the things that they can do. But, to be honest with you, from a financial standpoint, it might not make sense for him to go back to the UFC. He might make more money outside the UFC. And at the end of the day, David's not really worried about the glam and the glitz. Dave's worried about feeding his family. Dave's worried about making as much money as he can. Dave's worried about creating some sort of a path and a career path for him when fighting's over. Because, listen, the window shuts. It shuts quickly. And, it makes no sense to go over to a larger organization, make less money, and just because you can say you fought in a large organization, it doesn't really make much sense. So, I personally would like to see Dave make as much money as he possibly can, because I think he deserves it, and his background and the things that he came from and the things that this kid has overcome is unbelievable. And for him to be where he's in the situation he's in right now, and he can call the shots, I think he's blessed, and fate's taken him a long way in life from, being in prison to now being a world champion, and let fate keep taking him that way and let him keep making as much money as he can.
Mm-hmm. In terms of his MMA career, you've been around him basically since the beginning. Since day one, you've been around the guy. Did you always know that he'd be doing what he's doing now? Has he exceeded what you thought when the first time you ever trained with him or coached him or whatever? Has he exceeded your expectations, or is he right where you thought he'd be at?
Listen, I think Dave, the day he walked in, I knew had the ability to be one of the best people in the world. Now, David had a long road, Dave's also had a tough road in terms of maturity process. And what I mean by that is, listen, as a young fighter, people make a lot of mistakes. And he fell into that. He made some mistakes. He probably fought in the UFC a little bit too early. When he was in the UFC, he wasn't super focused. He was focused. Dave's always trained hard, but the one thing that I know I made mistakes as a fighter is I wasn't as mature as I should have been when I was fighting. And Dave, in the last, 2 or 3 years, has figured out a way to get that maturity in the sport, to be like guys like Frankie Edgar, guys like, Chris Weidman, guys like, they have a certain sense of maturity about them at a very young age, and they were able to figure it out on their own. It took Dave a little bit longer to figure it out, but he figured it out, and now he's starting to have success.
Now let's transition from David Branch to Liam McGeary. He fought on the next night. He fought at Bellator Dynamite. He fought against Tito Ortiz. What were your thoughts about his performance in that fight?
Listen, Liam is probably one of the most blessed athletes I've ever seen in my life. He's 6 foot. When do you get a 6'5" kid that can move like a deer? Most guys that are 6'5", they lumber around. Liam is watching, his grace personified. He's got beautiful movement. He's got very, very strong hands, and he's a tough guy. You're talking about a guy who's another one. Dave and Liam have very similar backgrounds. They didn't grow up in the best situations, and they put themselves in some bad situations, and they've been able to both overcome and make something out of themselves. And Liam is just, Liam's personality is just something that you can't even explain. Liam's going to find success in whatever he does just because of the way he carries himself and the way people are attracted to him. But Liam's skill set is unbelievable. I knew that he would be able to beat Tito. Did I think it was going to happen the way it happened? Mm-hmm. I thought it was going to be a little bit longer of a fight, I'm not going to lie. Mm-hmm. But, I thought Liam was going to end up knocking Tito out. Mm-hmm. But, Liam is very tricky on the ground. He's a 6'5" Henzo, purple belt, and you put him down in the wrong position. And I've seen him submit high-level, world championship-level black belts. You put Liam in the wrong position, he's going to submit you. And unfortunately, Tito was on the wrong end of the stick that day.
How good is his guard? Because we've seen it time and time again on display. The Emmanuel Newton fight, he won the fight off his back. He was way more active than Newton, who was on top. And in this fight, Tito got him to the ground, and then somehow there, gets into a scramble situation, and all of a sudden he's got some inverted triangle. So how good is his guard?
Well, you have to remember, Liam is training. Liam originally came from Braulio Estima
right.
School in England. Braulio is the top guy in the world in jiu-jitsu. So, when you're 6'5", 6'6", and your jiu-jitsu is rolling with world champions every day, and you guys have guys like David Branch, who are high-level black belts training with him. You have guys like me that are high-level black belts training with him. Guys like Holtz Gracie training with him. He's only going to be good, and having the 6'6" body is a blessing itself, because he can pull things off that I could never pull off. I can't do the things that Liam can do, and a lot of guys can't do the things Liam can do, but his body enables him to do that, and he is in touch with his body where he can, take that skill set, and he attributes it very well to MMA, because a lot of guys don't. You see a lot of 6'6" guys out there that can't make that transition, that they use their height from a striking standpoint, but when they get in the ground, they're not as creative as Liam is on the ground. But Liam has been able to figure out a way to use his body type to make it a very, very, very attacking defense attacking offense when he's on defense on his back.
Is that the difference for him, the training? Because we've seen a lot of guys with long limbs, but, like Kendall Grove and Ben Saunders, guys like that, they're not able to do what he does on the ground. Is that the difference?
Listen, Liam's training day in and day out with world-class jiu-jitsu guys. Anytime he steps into Henzo's Academy, anytime he comes to my academy, anytime he goes to the Edge, or Ricardo Almeida's, the schools that we're blessed here in New York. I mean, it's a little bit of a challenge. We're not like New Mexico, or we're not like some of these places where you just can go to one place and get your training in. But it's also a blessing, I think, because you get a little flavor of everyone else's school. And sometimes we have to hit the road and travel with our loyal teammates, and get a little bit of work from Henzo, get a little work from my school, get a little work from Dave's school, the Edge in Hoboken, New Jersey, get a little work with Ricardo Almeida down in South Jersey. But you're talking about getting work with 4 different schools where there's guys that are geniuses at what they're doing. So you're picking up little tips and nooks and little skill sets of the game that you can't really compare anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. When Liam first got to Bellator, a lot of people just thought he was a one-dimensional striker. People thought, he's training in England. He just came to the United States. He's probably not good on the ground. And then his first couple fights, he was knocking guys out. Then he started submitting guys, and then the Newton fight, and now, of course, this Tito Ortiz fight. He's doing good work on the ground. So the question I have for you is, what's better, his striking or his jiu-jitsu?
I think they're both the same level. I can't really compare either one. Liam's very dangerous on his feet. I mean, he's 6'6", and he has power. I've never seen it. I've held mitts for the kid. He has power in both his hands. He's got a power in his left hand. He's got power in his right hand, and his jiu-jitsu is at the same point. Liam has also matured. The kid that you saw in this first Bellator fight is not the same kid that's fighting right now. Mm-hmm. And that comes from working hard. That comes from working with different trainers. That comes from listening to his trainers. That comes from constantly putting work in to make improvement. The thing that's great about Liam and Dave and a couple of my other folks that I have coming up, and the ones that I know are going to be good, is I have Liam. Liam is still trying to make improvements when he's day off. Dave Branch, unfortunately, he's got to get a surgery, shoulder surgery. I think this week sometime. But once Dave's healed, he's back on the mats next day working. If he didn't have this surgery, he'd be back on the mats right now trying to get better. Those guys haven't stopped that learning process. One issue that people make that huge mistake of, and especially a person like David, because David's very skilled in everything. People make that mistake of, okay, now I know what I'm doing. I'm only going to train 7 weeks out for a fight. These guys are constantly evolving, constantly getting better. David added like 2 or 3 new tricks to his game from his last fight. Same thing with Liam. And that's why, every time those guys come out there, they're more dangerous. Now, listen, Liam is going to keep getting more dangerous. That's the scary part. Because Liam has just started wrestling 16 weeks ago. All right?
Right.
What happens when Liam starts defending shots now and making you, have a hard time taking him down? And you're going to have a big 6'6" guy on top of you trying to submit you. Liam is just scratching the surface on how good he could be.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you said you thought that the Ortiz fight would have went a little bit longer, but how did you think the fight was going to play out? Did you think that he was going to get Liam to the ground and then Liam was going to catch him in a submission, or were you guys hoping that, Tito I don't really know. He's a hard guy to read. Sometimes he looks like $1 million, and then sometimes he doesn't really look that good at this late stage in his career. Did you think he was going to be able to stop the takedowns and go for the knockout? What were you expecting going into that one?
Well, I mean, what I had in my mind, and kind of what I think a little bit of the game plan going into the fight was, listen, I think, Tito has very good wrestling. We know that. And Tito, for many years, dominated people in the ground and pound position. Our kind of game plan was like, listen, let's try to make it harder for him to take you down. Expect to get taken down. It's going to happen. You know what I mean? But let's try to make it so we don't get taken down. All right? Let's make it so he can't get taken down. All right? And then let's get him tired. And then as he's tired, we'll try to knock him out. And, that was kind of the game plan, was to try to keep him standing, maybe have some issues where we make it very hard for him to take us down, having issues taking him down, and then, get him tired and try to knock him out. Unfortunately, Liam had gotten taken down, and when he was in the guard, I'm noticing Liam was able to get some certain angles, was able to progress, was able to move his hips out, and then I started looking, and I'm like, well, I think Liam might be able to sit him off his back, and sure enough, Liam got him in an arm bar, and when he got him in an arm bar, he tapped. I thought he tapped the first time, and then, he progressed on, and Liam got in reverse triangle and was able to submit him from there.
That same night that Liam was fighting against Tito Ortiz, Phil Davis was fighting in the one-night, four-man light heavyweight tournament for Bellator, and he won that tournament, so now Liam and Phil Davis are going to fight. Before we get to that matchup, overall, Phil Davis's performance in those two fights, were you impressed by what he did?
Yeah, I think, listen, Phil's a very good athlete. He's a great athlete. He's a great, but, Phil's what he is. Phil doesn't, he doesn't want to, he wants to try to take you down. He wants to stick on you. He wants to grapple. He wants to grind fights out. He beat an Emmanuel Newton, who's a very, very tough fighter. But, Phil's skill set and the way Phil fights matches up very well against a guy like Emmanuel Newton. And I was surprised that he knocked out Cormone as fast as he did. But if you really look at the punch, it was almost like he jumped into the punch and kind of caught him in a weird situation. It wasn't like he was sitting down in a punch or timed anything up. So, it's going to be a tough fight for Liam. I think Liam can knock Phil Davis out there. I don't think Phil's going to want to have to try to grapple Liam because, Phil's not going to want to stand with Liam, and I think just history shows that Phil's not very big into contact. He doesn't like getting hit. So, if Phil thought about standing with Liam at any point during the fight, I'm sure, that would be a very big mistake on his end, but I'm sure he's just going to try to grapple him and take him down on the ground and, grind him out. But, the difference between Liam and all these other guys is Liam's very tricky on the ground, and the more, it's almost like sticking your hand in that, that bear trap, you know what I mean? You can only get it a couple times before you can get caught with it.
That's a really great matchup. I can't wait for that fight because Phil Davis, he's got a great Darce choke, anaconda choke, and he's pretty good at arm locks. And then you have Liam, who's really fun to watch on the ground. That's a fun one. I hope it ends up on the ground. I'd love to see those two guys battle on the ground because I think it's going to be very interesting. Now, when will you start to break down Phil Davis or the next opponent? Like when a guy gets right out of a fight and you know who's next, when do you start to watch film on who they're going to be fighting next?
A week ago. A week ago, I already looked at some of this Phil stuff. A week ago, I called Liam and was trying to plan out, some of his schedule. And right now, Liam's just trying to, get a couple things straight. He's had to work on, and we'll probably start talking to Liam the next couple weeks on, obviously there's going to be a very grappling-based camp, and work on certain situations. But here's the good thing: Liam has guys that can mimic Phil Davis very easy. I don't think Phil Davis has a lot of guys that can mimic Liam.
Right. Agreed.
We have guys like Jerry Rinaldi, who wrestled Phil Davis 7 times in college, but Jerry's got, world-class level jiu-jitsu. So, we got him helping us. We got a lot of guys who can go out there and, like I said, give him the Phil Davis feel.
Please don't hate me for asking this next question. I already hate myself for even asking it, but a lot of the fans, they want to hear your answer because both of these guys fight for 2 different organizations, and they're both the light heavyweight champions of those organizations. So let's say if David Branch and Liam McGeary were ever to fight, who would win that fight?
I couldn't answer that question.
Okay.
Really, okay. I don't know. Like I said, Liam changes every game. Liam's very dangerous, just from an experience standpoint, and someone who's been in a game, you would think David, because he's been out there longer. But listen, Liam is tricky. And Liam, once again, like I said, he changes every week. Every fight he progresses. Every week he gets better. So I don't, it's a really hard one to tell. They're both two great fighters with two different types of games. So, it's very tricky to figure it out. Dave's a very high-level jiu-jitsu guy, so to submit Dave isn't very, he's never been submitted in a fight,
Right.
So, he's tough, and his boxing is world-class, but so is Liam's. So I really couldn't answer that question for you.
Okay. You gave me a better answer than I thought you were going to give me. Everyone wanted me to ask you that, so I had to do it. But I'm mad at myself that I did it, because it's nonsense, because they're teammates, and
Two will never even sniff each other. It's not even going to happen.
Right.
They're super close. They fight in different weight classes. Dave would give up the belt to not have to fight Liam.
Right.
I know that.
Right. Now it's transitioned to you. It's been a while since we've seen you fight. You haven't fought in 3 years. Are you officially retired? Because I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I'm done. I started my own school, All-Star Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu here in Kenilworth, New Jersey. And 3 years ago I fought, and I just realized that, it got to the point where I was getting a little bit older. For me to get where I wanted to be, and for me to put the effort into to get to where I want to be fighting, just wasn't worth it. So, I stepped back, and when I stepped back, fate intervened. I got so lucky, and I had an influx of guys come in here and say, Jamal, why don't you train me? And I don't know if it's because of my background, and because I was probably, I actually, had a pretty good understanding and skill set in certain things that they just came in, and I fell in love with coaching, and now, I got a team of guys. Listen, I'm not no American top team, I'm not the Black Zillions, but, we have a small team of guys here that are growing slowly and making some names in a local scene, and I think some of these guys and gals are going to do very well, within the next couple of years, and kind of get their names out there and start having success. And to be honest with you, I've been super lucky. In the first 2 years I was coaching, I had Dave Branch win a title, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's unheard of. And then to have Liam McGeary win right away, in a short coaching career of 3 years, I have two guys that are world champions. It makes me very happy, and it makes me now feel that all that work that I put in on as a fighter is now paying off, because I get to spread that knowledge to these guys.
Mm-hmm. It's good to hear, because I was always wondering what happened to you, because a long time ago, before World Series of Fighting had their first event, you were on their website. You had a profile on their website, and it said you had signed with them. So I was wondering, when's this fight going to happen? Because I'm going to interview you when you finally do fight, because I remember you from the IFL days and followed your career then, and I was wondering when you're going to fight, and then never happened. And then I kept seeing you pop up in guys' corners, like David Branch, Liam McGeary, and Emmanuel Wallo, and some of these other guys that you were coaching. And then I'm like, okay. And then this, 2 title fights in 2 different nights pops up. So I'm like, all right, now I got to get him. So back on the retirement tip. Are you retired from all combat sports, or are you interested in doing some grappling?
I keep toying with the fact of about a year ago, I jumped into a grappling tournament off the cuff. Like, my students were busting my chops, and they were like, oh, an old man up in ads. And I was like, no, I'll jump into a jiu-jitsu tournament. And I jumped into a Grappler's Quest in their advanced division, and I submitted to guys in the division. And for a little while, I was like, maybe I'll get back into the grappling world. But to be honest with you, what I realized is when you're a competitor, you have to be a little bit selfish, all right? And what I mean by that is you have to be selfish with your time. You need to put your full commitment in terms of what you're doing and what your commitment is for that sport. And if I'm the kind of person that if I want to do something, I want to be the best in the world at it. Mm-hmm. And if I want to be the best in the world at it, I'm not going to be able to do it and be able to coach these other guys. Right now, my efforts are in trying to make my guys the best in the world.
So you're no longer the suit. You're just coaching fighters.
No, I do not sell medical devices anymore. I do not. I literally come to a gym at 5:30 in the morning and teach a cardio kickboxing class at 6:30. Then I hang out, and then I will teach a jiu-jitsu class at 9:30, and then I wait for my 12 o'clock class to start, and then I go from there. So that's what I do now. I'm trying to spread that knowledge and things that I learned over the years, and bring them in, and hopefully people can get the same kind of
Well, Jamal, we'll end on this. It's a little segment I like to call Really Random. That's where I ask you a random question and you give me the real answer. Some of these questions are custom made just for you, and some of these questions are random ones that I ask all the people I interview. So here's the first question. Superpower you'd love to have?
Teleportation.
Favorite movie?
Let me think about that one. I would have to say Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead.
Movie you've seen the most times?
Oh, let's see. Recently, I would say Wolf of Wall Street.
Do you remember the IFL rap?
Why is it that I feel this would come up again? This comes up every 2 to 3 months. Someone sends me a video of it.
I love it. I'm just asking because I'm a fan of it. You know, a lot of people can't stand it. They say it's not a good song, but I think it's kind of fun. You know, it's an MMA song.
The whole process of making that was a bucket list thing. We were in a rap studio with Jazzy Faye. I think T.I. or somebody was in the studio next to us filming a serious, who was a serious rapper.
Right.
And it was a great experience. But I'm not going to lie, every time I hear my voice, I want to crawl under my freaking table and hide.
Can you rap your part for me?
What was it? I can't even remember. I remember Henzo's part.
I think your part goes, I fight for the pit bulls, and then...
I want to hear it. Okay, let me hear it. I said something like I was a Don.
Yeah.
And I was like, and my hands fit fire like I'm a dragon. Or a dragon.
Yeah, I fight for the pit bulls. I'm also a Don. My hands spit fire like I'm a dragon. Yeah, that's it.
You have to realize they also gave us these words to say.
Yeah, yeah. Because I remember there's like in the music video there's like a bloopers where Pat Miletich is like, I can't remember the words. Write it down.
Yeah. They came up with words for us, and of course, Henzo being Henzo was able to like pull off the best segment of anybody on there because he just spoke another language.
Yeah. That's great. It's a great song. A lot of people hate on it. They say it's no good, but I think it's kind of funny. Don't take it too serious. It was
a lot of fun. Yeah. It was a ton of fun doing it. I tell you that much. It was an experience I'll never forget. We were in Jazzy Faye's studio, Red Brick Studio in Atlanta, which is where Britney Spears and people like that actually recorded at. And for us, group of knuckleheads to be in there, trying to pretend like we could rap, and to have an engineer and to actually go through the whole recording process, and for me to see, whenever I see a movie, like I saw Straight Outta Compton the other day, and I was like, that's what it was like when I was in the recording studio. The engineer was hyping me up and actually had me believing that I could rap, and then I heard the finished process, and I was not as good as Eazy-E when he did it.
That's funny that people still bring up that song after all these years.
If I could get that deleted off, I would. I should call Google or YouTube and try to get it deleted off.
Don't do that. That'd be a crime. Don't ever do that. From time to time, I listen to it. I gotta admit it. But anyways, moving on. What do you consider the best moment in your career? Because you had a lot of great moments. I mean, your career in the big picture was not that very long, but what you did was very impressive. You fought at one point in time for the IFL title against Vladimir Matsashenko. You came up a little bit short in that fight, but you were still there. And then you defeated Alex Schoenauer, Antoine Britt. You submitted Matt Horwich not once but twice. You actually defeated Horwich the second time. That was actually the first rematch in the history of the IFL, and you won that fight. And then you had a great submission with, Sherdog calls it a arm triangle, but it was a Von Flue choke that you got against Chris Baton. You had a lot of great moments in your career, even though in hindsight it wasn't really that long. But I'm just curious, what do you consider the best moment of your career?
Oh, there's so many. Probably the biggest moment, honestly, wasn't anything that I did. The biggest moment of my career, and probably the most fun thing I was involved in, was when we went down to Bettendorf, Iowa, and I didn't even fight that night. I got hurt. And Henzo beat Pat Miletich. And I remember somehow there was Brazilians all over Iowa, and every Brazilian that was in Iowa ended up in the ring that night, lifting Henzo in the air. And for me, that was the best feeling in the world, just to see somebody that I had looked up to my whole life, and most of my life, not my whole life, but a lot of my adult part of my life, and someone that was my mentor, to see them kind of come out and go to Iowa, which was Pat Miletich's town, and it was probably the first big event that I was involved in, and to have the people in Iowa booing us and yelling us and have Henzo go out and submit Pat Miletich the way he did. And listen, I love Pat Miletich. Pat Miletich is one of the greatest guys I know.
Right.
He just ended up being on the wrong end. But, for him to go out there and submit Pat, and then the way we all rushed I don't know how none of us got suspended or got in trouble, because there was probably 100 people in that ring.
Right.
And, we had heads up in the air, and we were just all going crazy. That was probably one of my best moments.
Yeah, definitely. That's got to be the number one greatest moment in the history of the IFL. And that's one of my top 5 moments in the history of the sport. That's such a great scene when you guys just jumped in there and lifted him up.
Yeah. And I remember Hyen was there. I'm trying to remember. There's so many Hyen stories, but I think Hyen might have been there. I think Henzo was on Hyen's back when on top of the whole crowd.
Best advice you were ever given through life, and best advice you were ever given through fighting, and who gave it to you?
Probably some of the best advice that I gotten was one of them is you can't cheat. I guess I was told by many coaches in my life, like my football coach in college, a guy Dick Biddle, who just retired. He always talked about talent and things like that, and he always said that he always had this speech that would be like, what do you have to do to win games? And everyone would be like, have a lot of heart, be tough. And he'd be like, listen, I can go to a bar down the street and find someone that's tough and find someone that has a lot of heart. And he was like, the way you win is you execute, okay? And what I mean by execute is make sure that every day you're dotting your I's and you're crossing your T's, making sure that you're putting all that work in practice. Make sure you're not skipping out on things, because somehow when you skip out on things, it manifests in a fight. If you're sneaking out at nighttime, no one knows, and you're out hanging out with your friends, that's the night that you're blowing the knee out in the fight. That's when there's an illegal punch that you get beat. It just somehow manifests. So the big thing was, that I would say was, Dick Biddle, my head coach from Colgate, where I went to school, was talk about being prepared and making sure that we executed and were prepared with everything that we did.
Person you look up to the most?
Right now, there's a couple of people I look up to. Obviously one is my father for raising me and raising 5 kids, putting 5 kids all in Division I schools, and obviously the second person, there's the people. The list goes on. Right now, obviously Henzo for everything that he's done, and right now I've been one of the probably most inspirational people more recently in my life is Mark Henry. Mark Henry has helped me out so much and has made me mature as a coach, and Ricardo Almeida, guys like that. So I can't say it's one. That's not really fair to pick out one person, because I'm so blessed to be around such great men. Like Ricardo and Henzo and Mark Henry. These guys are guys that are just they're unbelievable personalities.
What do you worry about? What's something that keeps you up at night?
Things that keep me up at night is my future. You're always afraid of what's going to be next. For me, I came out of a corporate environment, and now I own a martial arts gym, so that scares me a little bit, making that jump to, having a 401k and all of that stuff, and now it's like every day I wake up in the morning and I have to make sure that, I get my butt here, I make sure I pay my employees, and make sure I keep my lights on, and make sure that, I'm the best coach I can be to the people who are here, and make sure that, I have to remember, no matter what a crappy day that I'm having, when my students are coming through this door, this is the happiest part of their day, and I got to make sure I perform.
Let's say you found a magic lamp, and you rubbed that magic lamp, and a genie appeared, and the genie said he was going to grant you 3 wishes. What would those 3 wishes be?
Obviously, I guess you could say health. I wouldn't even say health. I would say, what would my wish? I guess first my wishes would be that my nephews and nieces all grow up to be very healthy kids and live productive lives. I guess I can count that as one, because I have a lot of new nephews and nieces, and I'm in love with them and just want them to be successful. 2 is that my fighters fulfill their best potential, and 3, that I'm just happy for the rest of my life.
What's your pet peeve?
My pet peeve is my biggest pet peeve is disorganized, lazy people.
What's your favorite guilty pleasure?
My favorite guilty pleasure is sausage and pepper sandwiches.
What's your hidden talent?
My hidden talent is I can ride a horse. I'm a very good horseback rider. It's not a huge hobby of mine. I grew up with them, and most people don't know
Number one thing on your bucket list?
When you have one of my guys win a UFC title.
Time period you'd like to go back and visit, and why?
I would say my early to mid-30s. I would have probably committed myself full-time to what I was doing. At the time, I was working a full-time job, and I was a little nervous and scared of leaving. I went to Colgate, and everyone at Colgate went on and worked in finance and had a lot of success. And I just wish that I would have just did it then, and not instead of waiting until I was 38. And I think that my career would have probably been different. And I think that also my gym would have been different.
When was the last time you watched one of your fights?
2 weeks ago. I was actually with, who was I with? Oh, I was with a girl that I was talking to, and I've known her forever, and she's a friend of mine. She dates one of my boys, and something had happened, an altercation happened, and I helped somebody out, and, I was very happy. It was done very professionally, and she was like, Jamal, she's like, I knew you trained fighters. She's like, I didn't realize, you were as tough as you are. And I was like, you didn't know I fought? She's like, I think I knew, but I didn't really know. And then as a joke, I put one of my fights on, and she was like shocked that I fought.
What fight was it?
It was actually a fight that I lost. It was a Mashenko fight.
Oh, okay. I would have thought the first Horwich fight, because that was your pro debut, and he had 25 fights going into that one.
Yes, and I tell people this all the time when my MMA guys complain about the amateur fights and how they want matchups. I said, listen, guys, my first fight, I fought a guy that was 25 fights. It was my pro debut.
Now, let's say that those nieces and nephews you were talking about, and your kids or grandkids, whatever, sometime in the future, if they say, "Hey, show us one of your fights," what's the fight you're gonna show to them? Is it gonna be that Matyashenko fight?
Yeah, I think so, because I think I like the Matyashenko fight because it showed a couple things. It showed me in defeat. It showed me winning as well. And it shows that you're not embarrassed by some of the things that you did. You're not embarrassed by your losses. You can still find positive things in losses and things that you don't completely succeed in. And there was a lot of great things in that fight that happened. I just ended up on the other end of the stick. But listen, it happens, and I also know I wasn't completely prepared for that fight. And I know that when I look at that makes me think that I'm never going to let any of my guys go into a fight not prepared.
If you could change one thing about the world, what would you change and why?
One thing about the world. I can change one thing about the world. Let's see. I don't know if I can answer that. There's many things. That's a tough one. See, I don't want to go off on a tangent about politics. It scares me. I guess if I talk about, I guess, equality, but I can't really talk about equality because socialism, I don't believe in the system. So, what would I change about it? Growing up as an African American in a white community, I guess I would say racism and hate.
Jamal, thank you for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it.